He looked at her and laughed. "I thought you were asleep." She laughed back at him and said, "I thought you were too." The two of them had been waiting for what felt like forever. They'd almost given up. "Can you believe it? We actually did it. We actually escaped." He wrapped his arms around her and pulled her into a tight hug. She buried her face in his chest and smiled, taking in his scent. It was a smell she knew she'd never forget. "We did," she said, her voice muffled against his shirt. He ran his hand through her hair. "I've been planning this for weeks," he said. She looked up at him with a wide grin. "You were planning this, and you didn't even tell me?" He gave her a playful look, and a smirk appeared on his face. "I wanted to surprise you," he said. "Well, you did," she said, and then she stood up and walked away from him. He had a look of confusion on his face. "Where are you going?" he asked. She looked at him with a smile. "I'm going to find us something to eat." And then she laughed to him, reminding him to eat, while he never showed any concern for me. I thought I didn't need someone to care for me, but in this moment I couldn't help but feel a bittersweet warmth. When Leo turned around with the food, I quickly wiped away my tears and sat at the dining table before he noticed. He placed the pancakes and milk in front of me and sat nearby, watching me eat. "If there's anything you don't like about this house, feel free to renovate it. I don't mind," he said earnestly as I ate. "I'm only staying for a few days," I replied. "There's no need." But Leo seemed genuinely enthusiastic, as if we were discussing a bright future. Not wanting to dampen his mood, I didn't argue further. Later, Leo took me to a private restaurant he frequented for lunch. To my surprise, we ran into Ted, David's assistant there. The moment Ted saw me, his face lit up like he'd found his savior. He hurried over. "Miss Sue, I can't believe I ran into you here. This is perfect. Why didn't you bring breakfast or lunch to Mr. Carter today? He hasn't eaten anything." I tried ordering food for him, but he refused both breakfast and lunch. I had no choice but to ask my team for advice. They told me the food here was quite good and suggested David might like it. So I came over. "You know David's tastes better than anyone, Miss Sue. Why don't you help me pick out a few dishes for lunch? If I bring them back, I'm sure he'll be happy," Ted said eagerly, looking at me with expectation. I knew David wouldn't like anything I chose, but I didn't want to brush Ted off completely. In my previous life, Ted had been kind to me. When most of David's company employees mocked me behind my back while I pursued David, Ted was the only one who offered me encouragement and sympathy. He once told me about his younger sister who, like me, had chased after someone she loved. At the time, he didn't understand her and had tried to stop her, but after she passed away from illness, his greatest regret was holding her back. From then on, his outlook on life changed. "If you want something in this short life, go after it," he said. "Life is only about 30,000 days long. Why not live true to your heart?" But having spent a lifetime with someone who didn't love me, my perspective had shifted. Some things simply weren't meant to be. Forcing them only brought harm to everyone involved. "Miss Sue, you're not like that. David ate every meal you sent him, even though he never let you in. He never threw anything away. If you just keep trying, you might succeed," Ted encouraged me, unaware of the changes in my life. He didn't know I had already chosen someone else as my arranged partner and thought I had simply grown disheartened. "That won't be necessary," I replied, pulling Leo with me toward a private room nearby. Ted stood frozen, staring at the direction I'd gone, as if struggling to process what he'd just seen. Midway through lunch, my phone buzzed with a notification. I opened it to see a message from David. "You went out to lunch with Leo?" "It has nothing to do with you," I replied. David's next message followed quickly. "You deliberately took him out for lunch and made sure Ted saw it. Isn't this just a way to get my attention?" I didn't even wait for him to finish typing. I blocked and deleted him without hesitation. "Who was that?" Leo asked, placing a plate of peeled shrimp in front of me. "No one," I replied, turning my phone face down on the table. Picking up my chopsticks, I signaled the end of the conversation. Leo didn't ask further. However, throughout the rest of the meal, he seemed unusually quiet and distracted. "What's wrong?" I asked, thinking he might not feel well. He shook his head, then suddenly brightened. After lunch, he suggested we go to an amusement park together. I declined, explaining that I wanted to check in on Grandma. "I'll go with you," Leo said, his eyes hopeful. In the end, I agreed. I thought Grandma would be happier to see the two of us spending time together than if I went alone. When we arrived at the Sue family home, Grandma was resting, so we didn't disturb her. Instead, we returned to Leo's house. The next day was Monday. I went to work at my job, and Leo headed to his company. Unlike Leo, I had no interest in the complexities of the business world and hadn't joined the family company. After finishing graduate school, I took a job at a research institute. It was a steady 9-to-5 position with standard holidays. The workload wasn't heavy, my boss was kind, and my colleagues were easy to get along with. When it came to work, both in my past life and now, I found satisfaction in its simplicity. I was content with my life and never felt wronged in any way. The days passed as uneventfully as they had in my previous life, except that the home I returned to was now Leo's, and the person I interacted with daily had changed from David to Leo. This was a positive change. There was no longer an oppressive atmosphere or the constant need to tiptoe around someone's feelings. During this time, I visited Grandma a few times. Leo seemed to sense the importance of these visits and always accompanied me. Thursday came quickly. It was the day Grandma would pass away. That afternoon, I received a tearful call from Mrs. Jean, telling me that Grandma didn't have much time left and wanted to see Leo and me one last time. I immediately called Leo to let him know. He told me not to worry and came to pick me up. Together, we rushed to the family home and to Grandma's bedside. Just like in my previous life, Grandma took my hand and placed it in Leo's, telling us to take care of each other. Under her hopeful gaze, I nodded firmly and tightened my grip on Leo's hand. Leo squeezed back, his hold steady and comforting. But this time, I knew I couldn't fulfill Grandma's wish. I would disappoint her. I silently promised myself that when I saw her in the afterlife, I would beg for her forgiveness. In my previous life, David and I had spent our entire lives trapped in a painful relationship because of this final wish. I didn't want Leo to go through the same. He deserved someone who could love him wholeheartedly and spend a lifetime of happiness with him, not someone bound to him by obligation and moral expectations. With Grandma's deteriorating health, her funeral arrangements had already been prepared. The ceremony was simple and concluded quickly. David didn't attend as his parents explained that he was on a business trip abroad, and they didn't want to distract him or risk any issues during his travels. They decided to tell him about Grandma's passing after he returned. In my previous life, on this exact day, David had also been scheduled to leave for a business trip abroad, but I had insisted he stay, dragging him into my grief and anxiety. Without my interference this time, our lives had stayed as parallel lines, barely intersecting. In truth, Leo and I were no different. We were also parallel lines, each walking our own path. After the funeral, I intended to move out of Leo's house. Over the past few days, I had been searching for a new place and had already found one. However, on the way back, I suddenly felt dizzy and fainted. I woke briefly to the sound of Leo's panicked voice, and I could feel the car making a sharp turn as he told the driver to head to the hospital. I didn't want to go. The hospital reminded me too much of losing my parents. The smell of disinfectant and sterile water filled me with dread. Leo had no choice but to take me back to his house instead. After that, I lost consciousness again. When I finally regained some awareness, it was faint. I vaguely saw Leo sitting by my side, using a towel to cool my forehead. "Don't worry, it's okay now," he said softly. "The doctor already came by. He said you're just overwhelmed with grief and haven't been resting well, so your body gave out temporarily. You'll be fine with some rest." I drifted off again, the exhaustion pulling me under. The next time I woke up, I was parched. I tried to open my eyes but couldn't. My body felt as heavy as lead, making it impossible to move. "Water," I managed to croak out. Almost immediately, a cup of warm water was brought to my lips. After that, I woke up intermittently. Each time, Leo was there. He was either cooling my forehead, sitting nearby working on his laptop, or simply watching over me. His attentiveness was remarkable. Any slight movement I made, and he was instantly aware. First I thought he was just pretending to work on his laptop, but as the programs on his screen grew more complex and detailed, I realized he was genuinely working. His dedication and focus made me smile despite my condition. That night was the first time in years I'd fallen ill so badly, and the first time I'd felt so cared for. It was ironic that the person taking care of me was Leo, someone I barely knew before this arrangement. When I finally recovered, I knew I had to express my gratitude. I resolved to properly thank Leo for everything. I thought I would recover by the next morning, but my condition fluctuated for 3 days. During that time, Leo helped me take leave from work and stayed home with me the entire 3 days. When he wasn't checking on me, he was busy working on his programming. It was clear he had a lot on his plate, yet he never left my side. By the evening of the 4th day, I felt significantly better. My body was regaining strength, and I decided to get out of bed and fetch a glass of water for myself. I tried to be as quiet as possible, but even the smallest sound seemed to alert Leo, who was outside on a work call. "What are you doing up? Did I wake you?" he asked, hurrying over with concern. I shook my head. "I just wanted to get some water." "Stay still. I'll get it for you," he insisted, treating me like fragile porcelain. He helped me back into bed before striding out to fetch the water. I felt a little helpless. "I'm fine now," I said after finishing the glass he handed me. Leo reached out to lightly feel my forehead. "It's back to normal," he said, but added seriously, "Recovering from illness is like pulling out a thread, slow and delicate. You still need to rest. I've already extended your leave for a week. Use the time to fully recover." I wanted to protest, but when I met his earnest gaze and noticed the stubble on his cheeks from days of neglect, I could only nod. After sleeping for several days straight, I didn't feel like resting anymore. Sitting up in bed, I picked up my phone and had just unlocked it when a sudden flash of lightning lit up the room, followed by a crack of thunder. In an instant, a shadow fell over me, and I felt warm hands covering my ears. "Don't be afraid," Leo said softly, his voice soothing. "I'm not scared," I replied with a smile, gently pulling his hands away. Leo looked at me in surprise before quickly stepping back. "I wasn't trying to," he began, flustered. "When it thundered, I thought you might be scared." "How did you know I'm afraid of thunder?" I asked, curious. Even David hadn't known that about me. On the night of my parents' car accident, there had been a thunderstorm. Ever since, I had dreaded stormy nights. But during my marriage with David, I endured countless thunder-filled nights alone, teaching myself to suppress my fear. Those long nights helped me realize I was no longer the cherished princess my parents had once doted on. I had to face everything alone. Over time, I got used to it. "I heard it from a friend," Leo explained, looking sheepish. "He said most girls are scared of thunder, so I just assumed." His voice trailed off as he left the room, only to return a moment later with a glass of warm milk and a vintage record player. "Listening to music helps calm the nerves. A better mood might help you recover faster," he said, placing the items on the bedside table. Soft, soothing music began to play in the background as Leo picked up his laptop. "Now that you're awake, I'll stay in the living room so you can have some privacy. If you need anything, just call for me." With that, he gently closed the door behind him. Left alone in the room, I looked around. Surrounded by pink walls, bathed in the soft glow of the warm light, the music played softly and the glass of milk sat invitingly on the bedside table. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly at peace. The gentle warmth of the room, the soft glow of the lamp, and the soothing music made me forget about the storm raging outside. I thought I had overcome my fear of thunderstorms long ago, but now I realized that it hadn't disappeared. It had just been buried deep within me. In the past, those stormy nights always left me tense. Yet tonight, I felt completely relaxed and at peace. Something in my heart seemed to have shifted. I caught a glimpse of myself in the dark reflection of my phone screen, noticing the faint smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. Suddenly, a chill washed over me, extinguishing that warmth. I patted my cheeks lightly, snapping myself out of it. No, this can't happen. No one can be anyone else's savior. I can't afford to have emotional expectations of anyone. The reason I had chased after David so desperately was because of something that happened 6 months before. At a banquet, he had stood up for me when I was humiliated. Before I was 5 years old, my life had been carefree, but after my parents' accident, I became quiet and withdrawn. Grandma cared deeply for me, but she was getting older and had many other grandchildren to look after. She couldn't focus all her attention on me. Besides, the bullying among children was something adults could never fully understand. Gradually, I lost all my friends and stopped wanting to go outside. The banquet in question had been for the 90th birthday of one of Grandma's oldest friends, a woman who had been very kind to me as a child. I decided to attend, but during the event, someone intentionally spilled wine on me and mocked me, calling me a mute. The crowd around us merely watched, entertained by the spectacle. That time, I didn't know how to stand up for myself. All I could do was silently pray for the ordeal to end quickly or for Grandma to come find me. What I didn't expect was for David to walk into the hall and see the scene unfolding. He stepped in and defended me. He was the first person outside my family to ever publicly stand up for me. I clung to that moment, projecting my emotional needs onto him. I sought the security and sense of belonging I had lost. That was why I didn't care about the ridicule or his indifference. I just kept chasing him, throwing myself into the flames over and over again. But after decades of a painful, entangled marriage in my previous life, I had learned my lesson. No one could save me but myself. Seeking security from someone else was just trading one abyss for another. What had seemed like heroism to me was, in David's eyes, a minor incident. He only helped me because of the long-standing friendship between the Sue and Carter families, not because of me as a person. I should be grateful for his kindness, but I shouldn't have placed my emotional dependency on him. The same applied to Leo. He was kind to me now because I was his arranged partner. If it were someone else, he would treat her just as well. Without expectations, there would be no disappointment or pain. I already had my own way of living in this world, one that protected me from getting hurt. There was no need to gamble on an uncertain future. When I recovered, I told Leo the first plan to move out. He stayed silent for a long time before replying with a single word, "Okay." I moved into a new apartment closer to my workplace. I had inherited plenty from my parents and grandma, so instead of renting, I bought a place. That way, I could decorate it however I wanted. Yet, every time I came home to the same pink walls, I couldn't help but feel like something was missing. One evening after work, just as I was about to head home, someone stopped me. I looked up and saw David. "I just found out about your grandma," he said. "I was abroad for a while. Are you doing okay?" "It has been a while," I replied, remembering that it had been over 2 months since Grandma's funeral. "I'm fine now, but thank you for asking," I answered out of politeness. But David felt different this time. His demeanor wasn't like the aloof, immature David I remembered. His gaze carried a steadiness that reminded me of the David I had come to know at the end of my previous life. I tried to discern something in his eyes, but I saw nothing. Maybe I was overthinking. "It's not safe out here at night. Let me take you home," he offered. "There's no need," I replied. "I live nearby. It's only a 10-minute walk," I replied firmly, turning down David's offer without hesitation. To my relief, he didn't press further, but he also didn't leave. "Do you still need something?" I asked, looking at him. "Can you add me back on WeChat?" David asked, his tone unexpectedly soft. "I promise I won't bother you again. I just want to stay in touch as friends." I shook my head. "There's no need. We work in different fields and won't cross paths in the future. Now that Grandma's gone, I don't visit the family home much. We probably won't see each other again, and that's fine by me." David fell silent, the atmosphere growing tense. "I'm leaving," I said, turning to go. But before I could take a step, David grabbed my arm. "You and Leo?" he started, hesitating. "I know you've moved out of his place, and the two of you haven't seen each other in a while. You don't love him, do you? You only chose him to fulfill your grandmother's wish. I could have done that too. As her grandson, I could have honored her wish." I had no idea what had gotten into David after his trip abroad, and I didn't care enough to find out. I shook off his hand and prepared to leave. But as I turned, I saw Leo standing not far away. The moment our eyes met, Leo turned to walk away. "Leo," I called out, stopping him in his tracks. He didn't turn around. "If you keep walking, I'll make sure to turn and run every time I see you in the future," I threatened, half joking but determined. Leo froze, his steps halting. David, still standing beside me, spoke again, his voice laced with familiarity that sent a chill down my spine. "Moo Moo." The nickname made my skin crawl. "Don't call me that," I said coldly. "We're not close." I pulled away from him and walked toward Leo. "Why were you running away when you saw me?" I asked, looking directly at him. "I didn't want you to see me unhappy," he murmured, his head hanging low. "When did I ever say I didn't want to see you?" I countered, confused. Leo hesitated before continuing. "If you wanted to see me, why did you move out of my house? Wasn't it because you were uncomfortable being with me?" I hadn't expected him to think that way. Lowering his gaze further, Leo added, "I know you like David. I didn't want to make things harder for you." As he spoke, he turned to leave again. "If you take one more step," I said, grabbing his arm, I really won't want to see you again. He froze, then quickly turned back, gripping my arm tightly. His nervous expression made it hard to suppress the smile threatening to surface on my lips. My water is out at home tonight, I said, clearing my throat. Can I stay at your place for the night? Leo stared at me, stunned. Is it inconvenient? I asked, feigning indifference. No, it's not inconvenient at all, he replied hastily, pulling me along toward his house. His steps quick and hurried. Realizing I couldn't keep up, he slowed down and glanced at me. I don't like David anymore, I said softly but firmly, and I never will again. After a long pause, I heard a quiet, okay from beside me. When we reached Leo's house, I realized what had been missing in my own. A home with someone waiting for me, lights on when I returned, and the warmth of someone who cared. 2 years later, I accepted Leo's proposal. On our wedding day, midway through the ceremony, David's parents abruptly left in a panic. I didn't learn the reason until the banquet was over. David had attempted suicide. Thankfully, he was rescued in time. His mother begged him with all her heart and soul, convincing him to abandon the idea of taking his own life. 2 weeks later, David was discharged from the hospital. That very day, he booked a plane ticket and left the country. He never came back. 5 years after his departure, I received an anonymous text. I'm sorry. It was the same day I had died in my previous life.